like we use the CBEX data for whole building score development, we would then have data at the tenant level that would allow us the possibility of looking at scores on a tenant level. But that is many years in the future. Right now, we're just engaging with them to look at putting the survey together. And then I think this is the last thing I wanted to highlight is our Battle of the Buildings. Hopefully many of you are familiar with this as well. That's our national building competition that we have now run. We're wrapping up our 6th year. Whoops, I jumped ahead there. Wrapping up our 6th year right now, just getting ready in the next couple of months to announce the winner of year 6. And we're looking ahead to our 7th competition for 2016. And we're really mixing things up this time. And what we're going to be doing is running what we're calling the boot camp. The boot camp, unlike the previous 6 years where this was a year-long competition and we looked at how much energy you could reduce over the period of the year. Whoops, keeps jumping ahead. I'm not quite sure why. We looked at how much energy you could reduce over the course of a year. The boot camp is going to focus on only 90 days. So the period is going to be September 1st to November 30th. And we're going to see who can reduce energy use the most in a 3-month period. So that obviously is going to focus on engagement of the occupants in the building and not as much on technology upgrades. We're going to provide all kinds of new and exciting toolkits and occupant and tenant engagement materials for you as part of that process. But other than that, it's going to run the same. Whoever reduces energy use the most over those three months is going to be declared the winner. We'll have lots of different recognitions in different categories. So please be on the lookout for that. The registration is going to open May 17th and be open for 2 months. And we hope that you all will consider participating in that. So with that, I'll wrap up. And here are some links and my contact information in case you want to take a look at any of what I talked about or get back to me with any questions. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Up next is Sarah.
Hello. My name is Sarah Neff. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sustainability at Kilroy Realty. For those of you who don't know us, we own office buildings on the West Coast. We own about 13 million square feet of office buildings, about 110 buildings between San Diego and Seattle. And then we are also builders. So we are building additional square footage in all of those markets. So let's see if I'm actually able to advance my slides. Great. So I want to just give a little background on who we are in terms of sustainability. Our sustainability program's launched in 2010. We've been proud Energy Star partners since then, worked with MOC for almost all of that time. And energy efficiency is one of the things I do all day long. And so I want to talk today about sort of what I've learned in the nearly 6 years I've been at Kilroy doing energy efficiency. And then I want to talk about, piggybacking on what Mike said about what is this behavior change that we're going to be going for. And yes, a lot of that will focus on tenants, but I want to talk about engineer engagement and property manager engagement. So with that, I'll just get right into it. So a little bit of background on energy efficiency. Energy efficiency to a lot of us is buying stuff. It's buying LED lights, it's buying cool roofing materials, it's buying photo cells and VFDs and some meters and window film and fancy software. And those things are all great. I'm not against any of those things. I do those projects all day long. But my experience with them has been that you do a lot of work, and then the savings are a little bit disappointing. It's not that it's not always that savings aren't realized, although that happens too, but it really doesn't move the needle. Doesn't really move the needle as much as I would hope. I don't see these big dramatic changes in energy efficiency that you sort of are hoping to get. You'll see 1%, 2%, if you're lucky, 3%. But when you're trying to drop your building's energy use 20%, that's just not going to get it done. And what does get it done, in my experience, is your team. It's your engineers, it's your property managers, and it is also your tenants, but it starts with your own people. And so the nice thing about working with your team is that we're not talking about capital budget, right? We're talking about something that is technically sort of speaking kind of free. And that's great. But I just do want to say a word of caution before I move ahead, is that by free, I do not mean there's a wide difference between a free beer and a free kitten. Okay, free beers, easy. You drink the beer, you go home, recycle the bottle, you're done. A kitten that's free, you're spending a lot of time and energy taking care of your kitten throughout its entire life. So these are definitely more free kitten strategies. But the story that brought this home to me was one of my buildings, I won't say what, when I got to Kilroy, I was so excited and enthusiastic. I was the first person to benchmark the building. The Energy Star, score was somewhere in the 60s. And I was like, we can do better. And we did a lighting retrofit. We went through a utility retro commissioning program and made a bunch of changes. And like a year and a half later, it was so exciting. Those buildings just squeaked up right over 75. We were able to get them Energy Star certified. And I thought, man, I have done it. This is as efficient as these buildings are going to get. Job well done, Sarah. I can be finished. And then the chief engineer retired, and then we got a new chief engineer who immediately dropped energy use in all of these buildings by about 20%. And that's because this was a guy who really loved energy efficiency, was super engaged in it, and he really, really knew how to make these buildings sing. And now all the Energy scores are in the 90s. So I put a lot of time and effort and money into the buildings, and that was great and important, obviously. But the real big dramatic change happened when we got our new chief. And so with that, I'll get into how we go about engaging our engineers. So the first is giving a window into how much energy buildings are consuming. And I know I said earlier, well, software, how much are we really saving? It's really, really important when we're thinking about software to engage the engineers in any software procurement process. And also, I highly recommend looking at software that is easy to understand and inexpensive. There's a lot of very, very fancy, amazing software out there that can measure the energy use of every last coffee machine. And that is great for engineers that have the sort of training and enthusiasm to use that software correctly. But what I have found is that a lot of my guys, they want to just get a brief window into what they're doing. Am I doing a good job? Am I not doing a good job? So this is some software we use, and it basically just says, really quickly, here's your building. What I'm seeing, in this picture is we have pretty good, buildings ramping up and down. There's sort of a shoulder setback problem. That's when janitorial is there, but overall pretty good. And that's really the sort of go, no go is what we want in terms of software. And now I have guys who say, you know what, Sarah, these sort of simple reports that we're getting once a week, I want more real time. And at that point, great. That's sort of the time to do the fancy stuff. But first, to engage your engineers, they need some visualization into what their buildings are doing, but I highly recommend not going too fancy about it from the start. The next thing I want to talk about is celebrating your engineers. One of my favorite programs we did last summer was our Engineer All-Stars program. So I have a lot of guys that do a lot of amazing work. And now one woman, I should say. I have finally one female engineer, for the most part, guys. And so what we did last summer was we created baseball cards for all of them that celebrated the amazing work that they've been doing in terms of energy and water efficiency. So here we have handsome Richard Pinson and all of the projects that he's done. He's gotten certifications. He's been nominated for stuff. He's done a ton of different pilots and projects, and he's reduced energy use in his buildings significantly. And we celebrated all of these things. We tweeted it out to everybody. They're permanently on our website, and we really found that this was a great sort of way to celebrate the successes of the work that our guys were already doing, and inspired a lot of them to take on additional projects, which was really exciting. The next way that I think it's important to engage your engineers is to make sure that you are trying to be Santa Claus. And by that I mean listening to your engineers. They all have projects that they need, equipment that is, equipment that needs an upgrade or that needs to be replaced, or a pet project that they've always wanted to do. And I think it's an important part of my job as a sustainability person to do my best to listen and to, within my power, make it easier to get the projects and that they want, because obviously people are really excited about doing things that they've bought into. And so when trying to figure out how to engage, how to engage your engineers, the first thing to do is to listen, figure out what it is that they really would like to do in their building. They know what their buildings need, and then go there. I find a lot of times what happens is sort of technologies and software and whatnot get sort of shoved onto engineers. They have to sort of deal with it. But starting that conversation early on and celebrating any past successes is a great way to get your engineers on board. So now I'm going to move on to property managers, because property managers are also sort of an unsung population in terms of engagement on energy efficiency. So I'll just talk a little bit about what we do at Kilroy to engage our property management teams. The first thing we do is to have a kickoff meeting. We have a kickoff meeting or phone call with every single property management team at the beginning of every year. And in that meeting, we go over the projects that got accomplished in the year prior. We go over the previous year's energy and water reductions. We confirm diversion, waste diversion. And then we set our goals for the coming year in terms of what we're hoping for energy reductions, water reductions, what projects we're trying to do, and then we go over a list of projects. And I think this is really, really important. It's really important to set goals, and it's really important to get everybody on the same page. It's hard in January. We've just come off of the holidays, and all of a sudden there's a new year. We're slammed. We're trying to figure out how to get things done and get into gear. It's really hard to make the time to talk to all of the property managers, but I think it's really, really, really important for getting everybody on the same page. And then my next slide is the budget. One of the other things I sort of hear with property managers is like, yeah, sustainability is great, and we're all excited about it, but then when it comes time to do the budget, we don't have the quotes that we need, and projects don't get budgeted. And so me as a sustainability professional, I am always getting quotes for everything. I want to get quotes all day long. I should never not be getting quotes for things, because what has a ready-made quote with a payback period and all the financial analysis done, when it comes time for budget, is so much more likely to get budgeted. It's not fair for sustainability professionals to say, oh yeah, go figure out your lighting retrofit, and then just sort of leave them. Property managers are really, really busy people that are putting out fires all day long. And so working together to get quotes and make the budget happen is really important. On the flip side, it's also really important to do the measurement and verification work. If you have done a lighting retrofit and you're trying to show that it was a good idea, it's important to go and look at the energy data and see how much the savings were and present that information. Make it easy for the property management team. And then the property management team can then use that information both to get more projects in the budget and also for awards and tenant memos and all that good stuff. So make sure to help with the budget. The next important way to engage property managers is to celebrate their successes. So one of the main ways that I like to do this is in our annual sustainability report, which we're in the process of putting it together right now, and so I've just written my case study. And when in my first years at Kilroy, when I was doing the annual sustainability report, I thought, I am the sustainability person here. This report should simply be more or less a report on what my activities have been for the last year: energy, water, waste, and all that. And then I went to an amazing discussion where somebody said, no, your sustainability report is the place where you should be celebrating your team. And it's one of the ways that a great way to sort of show recognition of the hard work everyone's done. And then I was very ashamed of myself, because instead of it being the Sarah Neff report, it should be the Everybody at Kilroy report for sustainability. And that's the way our report has been from then on, and it's much, much better. So this is a case study from a project that one of my property managers created on her own last year. She recognized a problem, which was that her tenants that wanted to put LEDs into their own spaces often just didn't have the upfront capital to buy them. And she said, fine, I will buy you your LEDs, and then I can bill you back, when we do all of our bill backs later. And that made it a lot easier for them. And now 50% of her tenants have gone ahead and bought LEDs through this program. And now the program is such a good idea that other property management teams in my portfolio are doing the same thing. So it's a great place to sort of celebrate the wins of people who have done really good work. And then also it's a great place to propagate ideas across the whole portfolio. And then lastly is awards. Everybody likes winning awards. Everybody likes winning Energy Star Partner of the Year and Toby Awards and whatnot. And sustainability is a really important part of this. And so as a sustainability professional, I find that that the more I can help other people with their award applications, the more that they are willing to dedicate their time and effort to doing sustainability programs in the following year. These are all awards that I'm proud to say buildings in my portfolio have won. What I find is that the more that this sort of activity happens, where I'm spending time on other people's TOBY applications and helping them with the BOMA 360, the more that those people are inspired to come up with their own projects. And really what it comes down to is that no one person has the ability to do all of the work that it takes to reduce energy in an entire portfolio, or at least I don't. Maybe there's a magical person who knows how. It doesn't work unless there is somebody who has gotten everybody sort of permission to say, hey guys, here's what we're doing. We're all going to work together to reduce energy. And once you sort of get everybody on the same page with that goal, then people come up with fantastic creative ways to solve that problem. And so in conclusion, the things I just want you to take away from this little talk of mine, which is, first, you need to make people's lives easier before you make them more difficult. First, celebrate successes. Do benchmarking for people if they don't have it. Get the quotes for them. Before you start asking people to do a lot of work, try to make their lives easier. The second is you need to help your team members set tangible goals. Suggest energy targets and water targets and waste targets. And then that way people are held accountable for what they're achieving. And the final thing is to celebrate successes. I truly don't, I love cheerleading and I like talking about how awesome my coworkers are, but I really don't think anything moves the needle on energy efficiency as much as talking about the great work that we've already been doing. And I'm seeing this in my own portfolio now. We're just in the middle of doing our annual sustainability report, and what I'm seeing is more energy reduction than we've ever seen in the past. We're usually at about 2% a year, and I'm really proud of that. It looks like we've more than doubled that in 2015, and I don't think it's any coincidence that last year was the year we launched our engineer campaign, and and we've done more celebrating of the work of our property managers in our sustainability report and more. So to me, those are the best ways to make sure that major energy reductions happen in your portfolio. And I'm happy to answer more questions during the Q&A section, but now I will pass it over to Barry Hooper.
Thanks, Sarah. Great advice.
Hi, this is Barry Hooper. Wow, that was fantastic, Sarah. So I'm Barry Hooper with the City of San Francisco, and I'll be talking about the what we view as a complement to the fantastic efforts of leaders in the real estate industry, such as Kilroy, that have demonstrate both best practices and long-term attention to effort and detail. And so the City of San Francisco is one of now 15 communities across the U.S. that has a mandatory energy benchmarking and disclosure program, as well as it requires energy audits once every 5 years. And in 2015, we worked with the Urban Land Institute and the Greenprint Center for Building Performance to analyze both the outcomes of that project and the state of the efficiency industry in general in San Francisco. And that the subject of that was this report, which you're welcome to obtain from our website, or which I'll provide a link at the end, or also from ULI Greenprint, our partner in the project. Pardon me. And for those of you who might not be familiar, the Department of Environment is a department of the City and County of San Francisco responsible for the primary sustainability agency for the city, and responsible, for example, for voluntary energy efficiency incentive programs in partnership with the utility, PG&E, as well as financing programs to run a PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing program, and numerous different innovative policies aimed at encouraging and, where necessary, pushing for improvements in performance across the built environment and across our city. ULI Greenprint is an organization formed back in 2009 by leaders of the commercial real estate industry interested in making a substantive commitment to improving building performance and recognizing that climate change was a source of direct threat to their long-term economic well-being, and also a imperative for their own responsibility. And then the Urban Land Institute is a mother organization to the Greenprint Center for Building Performance. So what I'll be presenting today is our combined efforts. And And so the basis for motivation partly stems, yes, from global warming, that we can observe the long-term trend of increasing worldwide average temperature, and more immediately and directly relevant to the real estate industry, the similar trend, unfortunately, in natural disaster with direct economic impact and implications for health and security of real estate portfolios, city infrastructure and cost to maintain that, and what we all pay as taxpayers to try to mitigate those losses or adapt to them. The Greenprint Center has been collecting data voluntarily from real estate portfolios around the world for about 6 years now, and publishes a really interesting annual report, which I'd recommend you take a look at, that does highlight both leadership examples from communities around the world, as well as individual case studies and trends across a portfolio of billions of square foot of real estate. The one thing, though, that an image like this, which is a pretty central image in their great documents, is it can be a little misleading, because these city average, or it could be easy to misinterpret, excuse me. These citywide averages that you see on this page are for the set of basically market leaders that participate in Greenprint and voluntarily report their building performance. So in each community, they're a subsample of a limited group of buildings. And a really great complement in Greenprint's view to their sampling and limited but very broad and global reach was working with cities where when there's a mandatory disclosure regime, you should have far more intense or possibly even perfect sampling and a very complementary set of information. And so that's what a lot of the basis where we began to work together. And they're finding, which I found interesting, not because it's flattering to San Francisco, but because they kept reiterating this in working with us repeatedly, was that they were struck by differences in culture and performance as they work with the city, and really culture and performance of the real estate industry itself, not necessarily the city government. And so that was a strong theme in our combined research. And the first thing that we observed was the common perception of there being a choice between environmental performance improvement and economic development was definitely a false choice. So zooming away from a benchmarking ordinance and looking at the energy use across the entire commercial sector in San Francisco, and also a number of indicators of economic health, what we observed was that, and by the way, fellow presenters, if you click anywhere, it advances to the next slide. I was the one who was doing that to Mike, I think, earlier. What we observed was, over the last 5 years, a significant improvement in GDP that coincided with, of course, the economic recovery, and so a fantastic improvement in commercial real estate valuation, and also in total jobs and employment, which is a critical interest for the city itself. And concurrent with that, we saw a 2% reduction across the entire commercial sector in gross energy consumption, which is, as Sarah pointed out, 2% doesn't sound too exciting, but in general, the trend is always for that inexorably to go upward. So to see considerable growth combined with a small reduction was a big success. And as a city, we're directly faced by climate change in terms of its impacts to our infrastructure, and such as, this is an example of the king tide along San Francisco's Embarcadero, which increasingly can overcome our seawall at direct risk to regional transportation infrastructure and to the stormwater and combined sewer systems that provide for a healthy environment. So there's not just long-term risks of climate change, but immediate impacts we've begun to feel as well. And that's a lot of the basis for why San Francisco has been working to encapsulate our goals for addressing climate change into 3 numbers: 0, 50, and 100 roots. 0 is our goal of getting to zero waste by the year 2020, putting all materials back to productive use at the end of its life cycle. 2050 is a goal of 50% of all trips within the city of San Francisco being made by sustainable modes of transportation, and we're aiming for 100% renewable energy supply to the city by the year 2030. Roots represents this sequestration of carbon back into soil and vegetation. Interestingly, those are ambitious goals. San Francisco's made considerable progress on the zero waste front, and with more than 80% of material being put back to productive use at the end of its life cycle. It already was the case. It turns out that in 2014, 50% of trips within the city were made via sustainable modes, so a lot of great effort and results there, and the challenge is maintaining that. And then with 100% renewable energy, we do benefit from California's renewable portfolio standard, considerable investment on the part of ratepayers in energy efficiency on the order of $1 billion a year statewide in California, and California's strong energy code. So we're do have a huge effort to get to 100% renewable energy, but a lot of strong and positive trends. And so in that context, the city adopted a benchmarking policy with the idea that an audit and benchmark together would present each building owner and decision maker and manager with 3 common pieces of information: a knowledge of how their building's performing compared to itself over time, compared to peer buildings put to similar use, and then an action plan in the form of an energy audit, which would identify specific and cost-effective opportunities for energy upgrades, and then last, some public disclosure of the benchmark data so that there's transparency about building performance and that the market is able to better function with better information. The first place to stop, of course, has been in our own city buildings, where we've demonstrated ongoing year-over-year improvements in gross energy consumption and carbon reduction. Similarly, the city's own building portfolio has been increasing over that time, so it's been a great success story, and a valuable tracking of energy use in this way has been a valuable resource for departments. But the real focus of what I'm talking about today is the private sector commercial buildings, which are predominantly, in terms of floor area and gross energy consumption, buildings that are 50,000 square feet and larger, such as the iconic office buildings you see along the San Francisco skyline. But the ordinance actually extends down to smaller facilities that are less likely to have on-site professional management, such as buildings of 25 to 50,000 square feet, which in this context we'd call medium-sized, and very small buildings relatively for this type of approach that range from 10 to 25,000 square feet. Those buildings are predominantly concentrated within the financial district of our community, and they do represent a wide range of building product types. However, office and hospitality are the predominant floor area and gross energy consumption. And what we've seen is far, far better engagement and success and compliance with facilities that are larger than 50,000 square feet and have on-site professional management for the city to engage with. And we still have a lot of improvement to do with buildings that are smaller. We do think that access to energy use data is a major a challenge that the state of California has addressed last fall in the form of Assembly Bill 802, which does require utilities to provide the sum of whole building monthly energy consumption to building owners upon request. So once that is in practice statewide, we do think it will be far more straightforward to benchmark your building in a small building with multiple tenants. Looking at buildings that have consistently complied, we see a consistent improvement in gross energy consumption, and narrowing that down to the set of, for example, in an individual market segment such as office, we see basically exactly what the existing commercial buildings task force suggested, which was about a 2.5% annual improvement on average from buildings that are actively tracking their energy use. And the point is not that the tracking is the source of the savings, but measuring is the first step toward managing. Distilling down further, looking at where the green print has more detailed information on individual buildings, we found a 13% reduction in, a 13% increase in total occupants and an 18% reduction in gross energy consumption. So even in individual buildings, a strong example of that citywide trend, and a stronger, of course, among market leaders who've been most active in trying to minimize their footprint. We also have seen that during the same period, the reported site energy intensity of office buildings in the city was about 27% below the national median. That is to be expected because of our mild climate. But on the other hand, if you use the Energy Star score as a means of normalizing for location and climate and use, the median remains particularly high for office buildings. And we do think that's an outcome in part of the long-term efforts of energy codes, which do apply to existing buildings at time of alteration, as well as the $1 billion a year that ratepayers invest in energy efficiency, and the widespread use of the Energy Star tool, particularly among market leaders who are doing so even before it was required by the city. We see similar results from hotels, that there's better than the national median performance, similar actually to the national median performance for gross energy consumption, partly because of the highly intensive use of hotels. It's a healthy tourist destination, but once operating characteristics are considered, the median Energy Star scores is well above the national median. Looking to the audits quickly, we found that about 80% of the floor area that's required to undergo an audit has completed that. And it's worth noting that buildings that have demonstrated excellence in energy performance through third-party certifications, either the Energy Star or LEED for existing buildings, are not required to do an audit because they're demonstrating active and successful energy management, at least at the level that a city-mandated audit would be expected to assist with. And even so, even in that stock of buildings that have reported very excellent energy performance, nonetheless, audits have identified considerable opportunity for ongoing improvement, particularly concentrated in lighting and HVAC, but also retrofit measures. So about a $60 million investment in energy efficiency in the citywide in building stock would be expected to yield about a $25 million reduction in energy cost and more than 150 gigawatt hours in annual energy savings. And to put this all into context, the Energy Star scores reported by San Francisco office buildings were among the highest in the United States, matched only by Minneapolis, and gross energy consumption was among the lowest in the office sector. And a big factor in that, of course, is the city's mild climate, which is why we would always include that as contextual information in this graph. So there are nonetheless, even with some success, opportunities for a lot of improvement in improved outreach to support small facilities, and that's been particularly challenging for us. There are more than a dozen in-person hands-on trainings in the average year, and that is a great resource, but we continue to work to engage smaller facility owners and managers to participate in the program. And there's room for standardizing occupancy and other metrics with what's collected by other cities to improve comparability and standardize the analyses that are performed. If you'd like more information about the ordinance itself or to review the raw benchmarking data for any facility, you can either go to our website, sfenvironment.org/ECB, which stands for Existing Commercial Buildings, or if you want to see the raw data, you can go to datasf.org, which is what you're seeing at the bottom half of the screen, and search for the term energy. And you can look up energy performance of individual buildings and up-to-date compliance information across the market. So with that, I'll turn things back over to the Mock Energy team, and we'll have a little bit of discussion.
Thanks, Barry. Great. Makes me proud to be a San Franciscan to see all the great work you're doing. We're approaching the hour mark here, but I thought we had time for a brief discussion. So to kind of get the ball rolling, between the three of you have very interesting backgrounds. What are the themes that you're hearing around technology and how, specifically in the energy efficiency realm?
I can start on that. The themes I'm seeing with technology is just a lot more connectivity, between your lights and your BMS and your, whatever, your your other sub-meters and that. So that's definitely a trend I'm seeing, and we're trying to sort of deal with that. It's one thing in a new building, but when you're dealing with an existing building that wasn't designed for this whole Internet of Things, it can be difficult. So we're figuring that out, and then we keep seeing costs go down of a lot of the energy efficiency technology. LEDs now really make a lot of sense in a way that even 2 years ago they didn't. So the costs coming down of hard stuff, connectivity with soft stuff.
Yeah, this is Mike. I guess I would second that. I was going to mention the obvious sort of move to LEDs, and I think the fact that it's just happening perhaps much more rapidly than anybody had expected. We're just seeing a huge increase there as the cost is coming down. I think on sort of what we work on in Energy Star, many people know we're sort of technology neutral, and in fact focus a lot more on the behavior. But I think the thing that we're dealing with and hearing a lot about is sort of on the metering side of, so not sort of an efficiency technology, but as more data is becoming available and enhanced metering systems in place, what can be done with all of that data is really becoming a sort of a larger point of discussion.
Great.
I think the only point that Sarah and Mike didn't hit on has been the energy code, which has been definitely very aggressive in how it pursues the state of California's goals for as much as 50% of existing commercial buildings to get to zero net energy by 2030, and that's the most ambitious of the state goals. And so along that path, just in the course of an alteration that basically touches your lighting system, what must be installed across the market, not just by market leaders, but by everyone, would have been a very high-end system not too many years ago. So a very low lighting power density and coupled with excellent controls. And so that's both a great ambitious thing the state's asking for, a challenge for a learning curve for industry, for supply, and for enforcement, and I think also a source of considerable energy savings.
Great, thanks. Where do the three of you see energy efficiency going in the far future, 5 to 10 years from now?
Boy, I would love to know the answer to that question. I see. I think I see a lot of this. I see a lot more widespread adoption of green leasing as the market sort of gets it. Green lease leaders launched in 2014, and BOMA has its green leasing toolkit. But I think property owners and tenants will start to see a lot of the lease structures that we have sort of make energy efficiency very difficult. And I think that there's going to be a lot more motivation to fix it. The other thing I see is technologies that help us with dynamic pricing. Kilroy is big into demand response, but we feel very lonely. I don't think very many other commercial owners do. But as billing gets more, dynamic, where you're charged a lot more for the peaks than you are for off-peak, I think a lot more people will be interested in technologies that help them, peak shave. Also storage.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think I would say I think where we're gonna see it. I mean, we're seeing in Barry's slides did a great job of showing this. We're seeing the uptake in the leaders, the larger companies with the larger Class A buildings in real estate. It's sort of like we're a market transformation program here in Energy Star, and that market is almost transformed. Everybody's doing it. Sarah and Kilroy are doing this. We don't have to be talking to people about that. I think that if you fast forward 5 or 10 years, the focus needs to be on those smaller buildings with fewer resources to tackle this issue that Barry very nicely presented. And I do think we're going to get there. I think it takes a different approach, different sort of outreach strategies and different value proposition, and possibly different assistance and incentives. But I think if we fast forward 5 or 10 years, I think we're going to see a lot more activity in those areas. And I think we're going to get a lot closer to that transformation in those smaller and medium-sized buildings as well.
I strongly agree with Mike and Sarah, and particularly Sarah's last point about I think that the wall between efficiency, storage, and on-site renewable energy is being chipped away at in California and in other states. And I think we're going to see a true distributed energy resources and comprehensive view of energy opportunity management across markets and across portfolios. In terms of a city's role, the one thing that I think hasn't been mentioned that I think we're very interested in is ongoing improvements in transparency and reducing the cost of identifying opportunities. So there's been this great effort with portfolio manager looking at operational energy performance, and we can see that there's considerable opportunity to improve insight by making available data, fundamental characteristics that are non-controversial about buildings, with their size and use, location, to really drive down the cost for us, but also for the private sector, real estate management, and innovators in terms of identifying energy performance opportunities. A metaphor for that would be kind of mining, that I think today we're largely prospecting for little nuggets of, or maybe big nuggets of efficiency, and I think we need to move to a regime more where if you're mining today and you want to stay in business, you need to understand what formation you're on, what are the characteristics of that formation, and where is the ore of which sorts of minerals within that mine. I think efficiency needs to transition to something very similar to that.
Excellent.
I think we might want to wrap up soon, but questions just came in. I thought it might be interesting just to get a quick perspective from everyone. Is there a significant difference or change in that you're noticing energy consumption between newly designed, so-called green buildings versus older buildings that have been retrofitted with older technology, with new technology? Is that something that you can testify to seeing, or if there's a difference in a new building versus an old building?
So from a city level perspective, the answer to that is it's complicated. That we definitely see differences in energy performance in the same building before and after the energy code is applied. So if the question is, do the energy codes work? Heck yeah. Do new buildings use more energy than older buildings? Well, the problem is, depends on the intensity of use, so how many people you have in that building, the shape, the form, and a lot of other characteristics. So we actually do see exactly what is being hinted at by the question, where pre-war buildings that had to be designed for comfort with limited artificial lighting and little or no heating and cooling, yeah, they typically have lower gross energy consumption, particularly in our mild climate. But they probably are not being used 24/7 as a data center, so it's not necessarily a fair comparison.
Yeah, and my boots on the ground experience echoes that, which is, the newer buildings tend to be occupied by sort of big tech tenants with a lot of monitors and equipment and all that stuff, and our older buildings that have been retrofit. I mean, so we still have tech tenants in those too, but yeah, I see both. I see both happening. We have great renovations where they're really energy efficient. We have great new development, but I think the cautionary tale is new development does not necessarily equal the energy efficiency they might be looking for, especially with trends to floor to ceiling glazing and all of that. Certainly puts, I think, some new buildings at a disadvantage.
Okay, great, thank you. So we run out of time. Thank you so much to our presenters, Sarah, Mike, and Barry, for taking the time to give their amazing presentations today. Once again, we will be sending out links for how to download the slides. And if you have any other questions, please email us at contact@markenergy.com or go to our website, markenergy.com. Thank you again, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.